Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast with Marika Messenger. Marika is founder and CEO at consciousleadership.org. We're going to talk about conscious leadership, high impact consulting, leadership mastery, and everything in between: psychology, neuroscience, energy, mindfulness, yoga, all topics that I love talking about. This podcast is brought to you by podpar.com. That's my podcasting agency. If you want to start, scale, or be invited to podcasts like this one, you can go to podpar.com. Marika, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays.
Hi, Charles. Thank you for having me. I have been a consciousness researcher for the last 20 years. And for me, that means understanding the symptoms and the root causes of distorted, unhealthy, or toxic behaviors within ourselves, within others, within organizations, and within our society. So why is it that as individuals and as organizations, we display unhealthy behaviors? Where do they come from? Can we transform them or not? How do we stop tolerating them? And what does it look like at the systemic level? So I've been coaching and mentoring 300 leaders over the last 10 years and 5 organizations with our business consciousleadership.org after 15 years in finance on the trading floor, where my last role was head of equities for Europe and Middle East for a French bank. And right now we are launching a new product that's called a Conscious Library, which is a brand new and super innovative tool that is designed for organizations to actually help them shift unhealthy behaviors within their culture. It's a tool to help all employees, which is actually our USP. It's for all employees so that they level up their self-awareness, their emotional intelligence, intuitive intelligence, systemic intelligence. And it's a solution to attract talents, retain talents, but also successfully do your diversity and inclusion. It's also a solution to a lot of CSG, ESG, and corporate governance issues, challenges and opportunities. It's a solution to hybrid work and how to make it work. But really, it is a blueprint for societal change, because I strongly believe that the private sector can be a big actor of change when it comes to systemic change. I see that we live in a toxic system. It's patriarchal, it's narcissistic, and it's a zero-sum game system, and that needs to change. So I deeply rely on organizations and conscious organizations to be actors of that change.
And what led you to this? Because it seems to me that a career in finance, 15 years, it's like very patriarchal and narcissistic, in which you were for 15 years. Did you realize at some point that, holy crap, I need to get out of here? Did you take consciousness into all of that, and that led you to your current company?
Yeah, absolutely. But it was not... It took me some time to actually fully articulate what I was exposed to. I grew up in a toxic environment. So I started working on myself when I was 28. That's 20 years ago, because I'm actually turning 48 in a week. So I started working on myself to really survive and understand, what was going on. And I kept working on myself for the last 20 years, because I believe that, that's a lifelong journey. And then when I was in the financial industry, I was very successful. I was really enjoying my job. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of high caliber professionals around me. But I could see as I was growing and evolving that some of the behaviors that I had, integrated, because simply this is what I was seeing in my environment, were actually not super healthy, and that there were better ways to do things. So it's by questioning myself and really, having moments where I was not feeling great about how I was behaving. I was like, is there another way? And by challenging that within myself and testing and experimenting new ways of being, I was like, okay, there is something there. And in September 2012, my company was going through a big restructuring. So my boss that I really loved told me, Marika, your job is dead at the end of the year, but you can be global head of research, which was a fantastic job. And I actually took the opportunity to take a leap of faith. And I was more and more called and passionate about self-development, and I wanted to explore more of the things that I was experiencing for myself. So I decided to give myself 2 years to train in several practices, to explore. So I trained in integral coaching, I trained in clinical hypnotherapy, yoga, mindfulness. I've also been initiated in 2 lineages of shamans, one in Mexico, one in Brazil. And that really led me to start working with individuals. And throughout the last 10 years, we have developed a lot of content, a lot of transformative trainings, because I realized quite quickly that, when you do this work of consciousness, it's really about understanding yourself from different angles and really having some tools each time to understand what is healthy and what is not, and where is it coming from. So we've developed, different programs in our own methodology, our own philosophy, in order to support people, understand their unhealthy behaviors, which really are the symptoms, and then get to the root cause of them, which creates profound healing and transformation that has effect, of course, on their career and the way they work, but ultimately they are becoming better human beings. So it has the butterfly effect on their social relationships, their love relationships, their family relationships. So yeah.
Right. The patriarchal and narcissistic aspect, for example, finance or many capitalist-oriented fields, I do believe that these behaviors can have positive net impacts if the back end is social, right? So if the base of the system is social, just that a lot of people and companies, they try to not be in those social environments, whether we're talking about tax havens, whether we're talking about redistributing money amongst the ultra elite and wealthy, and being disconnected, right, and creating their own little ecosystem, and then it becomes quite toxic for the rest of society. Do you agree with that premise?
Yeah, I believe that in every industry, there is a potential for positive impact. The financial industry is a big actor of the economy. And if we can have a conscious financial industry, that would be fantastic. But, my view is that the industry needs to change from the inside. And therefore, we need conscious leaders inside the financial industry to actually create conscious organizations, which for me stand firmly on 3 pillars. So profit, people, and planet. And if we can have those organizations, yes, then the impact can be positive and create, positive systemic change, of course. And, I've worked with organizations in the financial industry who have transformed into that direction. And, throughout how they treat their employees, their stakeholders, their shareholders, and the role model that they show, they are clearly having a positive impact. But it starts by recognizing that there is something toxic within the system, and that needs to change.
Do you feel that it's possible to, because in your case, you started in the capitalist world and you were successful, right? And then it became like more heart-centered. Do you think it's possible, or if even it's valuable, to go straight to the heart without going through the capitalist system and winning that part of the game?
That's a very good question, and I'm not sure it is possible, actually. When I left the financial industry for a few years, I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone in the financial industry anymore. And I was so relieved to, join the well-being industry, and I was kind of naively convinced that it would be full of, aligned people and conscious people. I've realized that actually the well-being industry can be even more distorted than the financial industry. So, it's about human, and, people will be people, and we have to discern the ones that actually are conscious with the ones that are not. So, I think it's not specifically a financial industry issue. It's a systemic issue, and this is what we really need to be aware of. But I want to share that, for many years, I've been a pioneer in the field of conscious leadership for 10 years now. And at times, I really felt like the world was not ready for these teachings. And I had to do a lot of education around why we need a new leadership paradigm, what it would make possible. But over the last 6 months, I've really seen a big evolution where there is much more awareness of, the unhealthiness of our systems and organization. And there is much more of a willingness to drive change. So that brings me hope.
You feel that heart and brain, or do you feel that heart and capitalism can coexist? What would be that model? Would it be to gain a bunch of money and be like, hey, I have the arrogance to think that I can redistribute that money better than others? Like a bunch of effective altruists have did, Sam Beckman-Fried included. What is your stance on that?
Yeah, and just to go back to your previous question a bit, what I've observed is that the more you have experienced capitalism and success in that model, and the more you've been able to be exposed to its unhealthiness, the more you're going to be equipped to actually lead the way to a better system. And when you haven't been exposed to that, there might be a lot of spiritual bypassing going on, where people are just like, oh, I'm going to meditate on this and I'm going to rise above, but the shadow work is not done. So for me, the biggest actors of change are actually people who have experienced toxicity and might have been toxic themselves, and have had the willingness to change. Not everybody can change, right? Like, people who are very high in the spectrum of narcissism will never change. And we need to discern them. Then what's the model? That's a very good question. I mean, the way I see it is that the system we live in is a zero-sum game. So if you win, I lose. So we're always fighting against one another, so that, I win and you lose. And that's the shift that needs to happen. We need to all come to a place where it's a win-win system. In other words, it's a we mindset rather than an I mindset. And then what does that look like, in every dimension, politically, economically, at the organizational level? I think we don't have all the answers. Many things have been tried and tested and haven't worked. Some things haven't. But I truly see that it's the birthing of this new system is something that it's like we build a bridge as we walk it. So we don't need to have all the answers. What we need to do right now really is to shift what is not healthy. I mean, stop it, right? Within ourselves, within our organizations, and see what better ways of doing things are available to us. And we need to embody that. We need to test that. We need to advocate that, which is why I'm a big believer in, advocacy of conscious leadership, right? What does it look like? And be creative and innovative with that. Rather than wanting to know what it looks like and having already solutions and answers. I think we are in a transition where there is a deconstruction and a reconstruction that's happening, and we don't know what the final picture will look like. But as long as we are willing to walk that bridge, I trust that some new rules, some new codes are going to emerge at every dimension of our systems, really.
Toxicity is an interesting word. I find that a lot of toxic people use the word toxic to project their own toxicity out there, whatever that means. And
That's true.
Also, I feel that toxicity is part of this world. It has beneficial effects most of the time. That is, forest fires, they breathe new life, animals killing one another. Also, everything gets recycled. So I feel there needs to be some toxicity. Even radioactivity in some cases can lead to some growth. And toxic muscle impact, you know, I mean, as long as the muscle's not disintegrating on itself, which is like the very end, and that, yes, of course, it's toxic. I think it's called muscle necrosis or something like that. But when you destroy your muscle, it rebuilds itself. So what is your definition of toxic?
My definition of toxic is, you know, everything that is, that's a good question, right? But at the individual level, it is everything that is, again, serving me rather than us. It's conflict of interest, it's hidden agendas. And you know, this is toxic at all levels, right? We have seen everywhere in our economy where, you know, some hidden agendas and you know, unshared conflict of interest have resulted in decisions that haven't been serving the highest good of everyone. So for me, that's a big one. Then how does this translate, you know, in individual behaviors? It translates in, you know, manipulation, you know, most likely. And then it's, I mean, all the symptoms of highly narcissistic people. We have denial, we have gaslighting, we have, you know, stonewalling, the silent treatment, all of that, right? Double standards is the big one, right? It's like you have to do this, but I don't apply this to myself. So it's all those types of behaviors that, and you know, the interesting thing with toxicity is that it's not always toxic, it's gray, right? If it was only black, it would be very easy to see. But because it's sometimes white, sometimes black, and kind of we navigate in the gray, you know, this is what creates cognitive dissonance in people, and we don't really know where we stand. So gray for me is the birthplace of suffering and manipulation. And this is, you know, Brené Brown says, you know, clarity is kind and lack of clarity is unkind. And I really second that. So, you know, this is for me the birthplace of toxicity. Having said that, I agree with you that creativity, innovation, disruption sometimes comes from chaos, right? So it's a dance that we have to dance, right? But sometimes it's like, as long as we have a very clear frame around what is healthy and what is unhealthy, we could have you know, some room inside that frame in order to create, in order to disrupt, in order to innovate.
Right. Win lose taken to an extreme, and a somewhat zero sum game, you know, one for me, zero for you. I see, you know, the startup ecosystem as very hard to succeed into nowadays, and I don't think it's going to get any better. And I think it's really going to create a rift between people that love pain and want to grow, and people that just want to be and have fun on this planet Earth, you know, because people weren't given a choice to be born on this planet Earth, you know, and if they want to chill and just chase serotonin, that's fine. But it seems that nowadays they're kind of in a rift, you know, and it's quite hard for them to make something. That's why most go into the 9 to 5 world. And I do believe that big corporations do not have a big, positive incidence on this planet Earth. I think it's modern slavery. I mean, that's quite contrarian, but that's my stance, at least on the topic. And a good definition of that would be Machiavellian game, like profit racketeering. I think that's really sort of black and white war profiteering, that is, and companies making profits out of these wars, you know, that we're seeing in Ukraine, for example, in Russia, and then in Israel and Hamas. Terrorism would also fall into that category. Now, I want to ask, like, yeah, you've also pointed out to narcissists and so forth, and you're not the first person I'm talking to that feel that these folks cannot be fixed, but it also seems that there's a natural mechanism against narcissists, and most of the time they're not winning for quite some time, you know, they get a lot of adversity in their lives. The question for you is, there's folks like me that go for win-win. For example, I consider myself as an innovator, and I always fetch the last new thing, and when I get it, I expose it to the world. You know, I'm like open source, and that's kind of the playbook of modern Silicon Valley people that want to get rich, and get very wealthy, but they still share their playbook, whether it's a book, whether it's tips, whether it's just like being public about their effort and sharing that with the world. And vs a narcissist, someone that is in secrecy, right? Normally they don't want to share anything, they're kind of evil. I do feel that my playbook is going to win, and that a good is can win over evil. What do you think about that playbook, and do you think that narcissism actually scaled?
So first, I agree with you that the rift is getting bigger and bigger, right? So I clearly see, and I've mentioned 300, leaders over the last 10 years. So I see a lot of people, and I hear a lot of stories. And clearly, conscious people who, approach everything from a place of benevolence and good are less and less tolerating of, unconscious people. The conversations that it's like it's becoming more of like a radio station where the frequencies just can't match anymore. So that is clearly happening. For me, that's a good thing, because I really see that, as conscious individuals who actually want to be force for good, we have to come together in order to create that new system. And there is no point really wasting our time and our energy with people who are not aligned with that. Sorry, I forgot your question. Yeah, okay, I get it. So I fully agree again with, open source. And clearly, the narcissistic personality disorder is not somebody who shares, is not somebody who gives. They're all about taking. And I fully agree as well that ultimately these people are not happy. And the more they age, the less happy they are. It's almost like, the narcissistic traits just come out more and more. Also, thanks to the awakening of a lot of people around those behaviors. And for that, I thank social media a lot, because there is a lot of, education around that. There is less toleration. There is more recognition of those patterns. So clearly, they have much less power or leeway to actually, use their tactics. So there is more and more calling out on those behaviors. But really, those people, the way they function is that they are trying to take inside of you what's not inside of them through actually power, right? And control and domination and sometimes intimidation. But inside there is no connection to anything good. So you can't be happy when you're this way, right? And more, what gives them power and happiness is escaping them, because there is less toleration of those behaviors. So more and more people are aware of the red flags in relationships. More and more people are aware of the green flags in relationships. And same with organizations, clearly those days, and especially millennials, they want organizations who not only have a strong mission and a strong vision that is purposeful, but also they want to know what is the culture, and what are the values of the organization. So there is less and less room for toxicity within our system, but it's still there.
I think most corporations are full of shit, you know. I don't think they will also be there for long. I think there's this natural karma like that we just described of good people vs narcissists, for example. We don't even need to do action. I think it's just naturally being removed. But on the other side, yeah, there's other effects, you know, like being harder to found a startup. But I think corporations, they're talking about hypocrisy, like, yeah, then I have a strong aversion to that. And lies, it's just prevalent in orgs, you know. It's like, let's just put this mask, and an organization in itself doesn't seem to make sense, you know. Yeah, it's a collective, it's a group of people, but then people are like, this is more of a sports team than a family. Sure, what is a sports team? Is it like a team of mercenary that you send out there? And that's because of the capitalist model that we impose on society, which is a beautiful invention and tends to create more peace than war. but it seems to me that the future of organizations is couple of humans, couple of very smart humans managing a bunch of AIs. And eventually that would create some kind of UBI for people to just chill and have fun instead of work at something and put a fake smile in something they don't even like doing, or teaching themselves to like something. And I'm guilty of that too. I taught myself to love work and to love money, you know. Naturally, me, my natural state's probably like gaming in front of a computer for 10 hours a day, you know. So with that being said, first, what do you think about that, and where would that place the future of humanity vs capitalism and corporations?
Yeah, and you know, that's a big question. If we talk about the future of organizations, I mean, I'm older than you, right? So I've really had a career in the corporate world, and for 15 years. Um, I I was an unconscious leader at the time, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy working hard. And that allowed me to express a lot of things inside of me. And I still like to work. I still like to, you know, execute well, to manage, to lead teams. I agree that, you know, we are changing the way we work, and that's one of the things I teach, right? So there is a lot more that needs to be internalized in terms of being clear and being present, and you know, giving ourselves the time to reflect, so that when we execute, we are very efficient, not only because we have the systems and the procedures and the team, but also because we are very clear with our intention, where we're going, and so on and so forth. So I agree that we need new ways of working everywhere, not only in big organizations, but also as entrepreneurs. You know, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and you know, it's sometimes you work much more as an entrepreneur than, as you know, than you work in an organization. So that way of working is changing. When it comes to the future of organization, I'm not as radical as you. I see that in organizations, and I've worked with some of them, where actually there is a role model, there is a blueprint of healthy way to lead an organization, where there is you know, employee satisfaction, when there is client satisfaction, when there is a mission, when there is a purpose. And you know, I know conscious people who are very happy with their organization. So I wouldn't be so radical as to thinking that, you know, everybody is going to chill, and it's going to be a bunch of AI people. Of course, AI is really changing things. For me, I see AI as a huge opportunity to support people be more and more in their genius. You know, that's a thing that I do a lot with kind of middle managers. When you in your career have reached a place where your execution caliber is super high, and this is what you're good at, this is what you're paid for, but you reach a place where you want to go higher, you want to, you know, go into more strategic thinking, that requires a leap of faith, because you can't be in the trenches executing and at the same time being in high level thinking. So it requires you to actually, you know, jump into first get rid of a lot of execution, which is scary for a lot of people, because they're letting go of what they're good at and what they paid for, and explore yourself as a strategic thinker, as a visionary, as an innovator, and so on and so forth. So for me, I really see AI as a way to support human beings, delegate more the execution, automate, have better systems, better procedures, but really so that we can level up, you know, our ability to you know to think strategically, to connect with our intuition, you know, to tap into other ways that we have to be humans, that we haven't really been able to tap into, because we're just living in this matrix that tells us that we have to be busy all the time, which is actually holding us back from our powers as human beings.
For corporations, I just don't see how signing an NDA and being a good dog, if not you're being fired, how can that lead to human development, you know?
I mean, yeah, but signing an NDA and being a good dog is one type of organization, right? And I see a lot of organizations, and what are you referring to when you say signing an NDA? Because that happens most of the time where there is conflict, right?
It's just that most people in corporate, like, I've worked with corporate and they can't say stuff, it's quite pathetic. They can't express themselves freely. And I don't see how that leads to human flourishment. I really think corporate jobs are, and 9 to 5 is the modern slavery. We talk about freedom of speech a lot nowadays, but truth is people are scared to speak their truth, because else they'll be fired. And on the other hand of that, we see woke people that just express themselves way too much, and don't use their brain. And that also creates discourse because it's just like spreading bullshit in society, and like just listening a bit too much to your emotions and not putting some brain enough. But yet I feel the corporate world probably employs what, 20-30% of world population. So to me, it seems that, yeah, it's like restraining a lot of people to tell their truth. And then the flip side of that is like, oh, do I want to launch a business? No, because it's super hard. Because yeah, it's just you need to be a freak to start a startup and survive and thrive, not be Machiavellian, but that's the flip side of it. So, but me personally, I do value freedom of speech a lot. It leads to neuron creation in the brain and the heart, and it allows me to become a better human being. And if I just restrain myself and not explore all the facets of myself, I feel that I would be missing out in my human flourishment.
I mean, I agree with that. One of the core pillars of our teachings, conscious leadership, is authenticity and vulnerability. And, it's all about allowing authenticity to be possible in organization. And for me, that's the key to inclusion, right? If we look at diversity and we're just ticking boxes, but we are not creating a safe space for everyone to actually express their views and be themselves, this is not inclusion. This is bullshit, right? So I fully agree with that. And I also agree, with the fact that, in the woke movement, there is too much sharing. there is too much like, oh, this is how I feel, and it's not grounded, right? But for me, it's in the exploration of polarities that we find the right balance and the equilibrium. And this is all that we teach, really. It's like having a language that actually bridges the two, right? So how can I show up authentically in an organization in a way that doesn't make me look like I'm crazy, I'm in La La Land, and I'm talking with the angels, right? And that's important. If we look back at the 70s and like the hippies, they were onto something, right? They had some truth in what they were saying, but because they were not grounded and they were not in the world, they couldn't do anything with it, right? And so now we have the opportunity to actually look at those truths from a perspective of bringing them into the world with people who actually are have a certain caliber in business, have a certain credibility, a certain legitimacy, and are actually able to integrate those teachings into the business world and the world in general. And for me, that's the big difference. And this is where this is where balance is, So talking about the brain, it's like it's the right brain and the left brain. So the right brain is, as it's, the intuition, the receptivity, the interconnectedness, the feelings. And the left brain is the masculine brain, which is execution, organization, structure. We need those two brains to work together and to communicate. And if we are, completely lost in our right brains, nothing's going to happen in our world, And if we are completely lost in our left brain, we are not coming at things from a place of, we're coming at things from a place of separation rather than interconnectedness.
Love that. I fully agree. Where can people find out more about you, Marika?
So you can follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Marika Messager. And then there is our website, consciousleadership.org, which is full of complementary resources. You know, I also embrace the open source model. So I encourage you to have a look. You've got some, you know, there is a digest we send every month, but there is also a lot of useful resources, meditations. There is a leadership quiz. So a lot of things to play with if you want to dive a little bit more into the world of conscious leadership. Which I have to say, of course it's a business, but more than anything, it's a community and it's a movement. So, we love to welcome you in that community, and I truly see that, we need to come together so that actually together we create that new societal blueprint. So it's important to recognize one another and to, talk to each other and build that community.